Well, it's now day 13 of Russia President Vladimir Putin's unprovoked invasion of their neighboring country, Ukraine. News reports indicate that this is far longer than Russians and even American intelligence suggested Ukraine would be able to resist and withstand. Military and civilian Ukrainians have shown incredible tenacity to hold off Russian troops, perhaps in large part because of the fearless leadership of their president, President Zelensky. Where leadership was not shown, which many argue enticed Putin to invade, was the Biden administration. And ironically, one of the casualties of Biden's weakness may be one of his prized objectives, returning the U.S. to the Iranian nuclear deal, or the JCPOA. Of course, no country is more concerned about a nuclear Iran than Israel. Joining me now live from Jerusalem is CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell. Chris, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Tony, great to be with you again.
Let's start first with the Prime Minister making a surprise trip to Russia on Saturday. He's an Orthodox Jew, and he traveled on the Sabbath, which is highly unusual. So that speaks to the urgency of his mission. An Orthodox Jew is allowed to travel if lives are at stake. What was the outcome of that meeting?
Well, Tony, we don't know exactly what went on during the meeting. It lasted 3 hours with Vladimir Putin. And as you said, very unusual for an Orthodox prime minister, the first one in Israel's history to actually go on the Sabbath. And as you said, he did it to do save lives. And he did it, as your report said, with our CBN News report, he did it as felt a moral obligation to go ahead and do that. After he was with Vladimir Putin, he also went to the Germany to meet with Germany president. He also spoke with Zelensky as well 3 times. And the idea is to help mediate what's going on right now in Ukraine and try to bring some end to the hostilities right now and the aggression by Russia. Obviously, it hasn't had an impact yet. But we'll see what happens. I know they feel like it is a slim possibility, but they felt it was important, as I said, a moral imperative that that Bennett would go. I'm sure there were two other topics that they talked about, Tony. First of all, would have been the Iranian nuclear deal. The second would have been the number of Jews that are in Ukraine. There's estimates as many as 200,000 Jews in Ukraine right now. Some of them are already coming back. They're expecting thousands, if not tens of thousands of Jews to come back. We were at the airport the other day. We saw a plane load of 160 come. So I'm sure that was all part of the conversation that Bennett had with President Putin.
You know, Israel is in a unique situation, as the prime minister pointed out, having relationships with Russia and, of course, relationships with the West. You mentioned, and we talked about at the top of the program, the Iranian nuclear deal. No one is more concerned about the outcome of that, and Naftali Bennett has been very outspoken about Israel's opposition to the Biden administration re-entering this deal. It appears that, or there's word that Russia is attaching language to any type of deal. If sanctions against their oil comes in, they're out. Where does that stand?
Well, people were expecting the Iranian deal to be signed within 24, 48 hours a couple of days ago. And then now what Russia has done is asked that there would be an amendment to it, a written guarantee from the U.S., no less, that there would be no interruption in the trade between Russia and Iran. And I think that's held it up right now. The way that Israel is looking at this, they see a very, very bad deal. And even the reports that have been coming out in the news, we reported on this on Monday, is that for several things. First of all, the sunset clauses will remain, which means in about 9 years, Iran will have a free reign to go get a nuclear weapon. They also have ability to keep their enriched uranium, ability to keep their advanced centrifuges, and they also have sanctions relief on some of Iran's top officials, like President Ibrahim Raisi, who's responsible for the deaths of thousands of political prisoners. So all of these news reports coming out really just add to the angst here in Israel that this is a very, very bad deal. And then it puts Israel, Tony, in this quandary of saying, if this really paves the way for a nuclear Iran, will Israel go ahead and attack military sites there, the nuclear sites in Iran? So that puts them in a very, very difficult situation.
It does tactically and strategically puts them in a bad situation if, the rest of the world agrees to this, and then they have to, they're put into a position where they have to act prior to the completion of the timeline of 9 years, because at that point, Iran has all the ability they need to strike first.
Yeah, really puts them as a nuclear threshold country, and the breakout to a nuclear weapon could be a matter of weeks or months. Now, three things have to happen. First of all, they have to have weapons-grade enriched uranium. They have to have ballistic missiles. They do have those. Once they get the enriched uranium, they have to weaponize that and put it into a miniaturized nuclear weapon. We don't know how far away that is. There's estimates of maybe as much as a year. But when they go ahead and get military grade uranium and have the other elements, it's really kind of game on here for Israel. They don't want another Holocaust. And someone has said, our good friend Joe Rosenberg said, Iran could do in 6 minutes what it took 6 years for Adolf Hitler to do, to kill 6 million Jews. So for Israel, it's an existential threat. And as they have said more and more and more openly, whether it's Israeli Prime Minister Bennett, whether it's Defense Minister Gantz, they will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon.
Chris, this is such a unique geopolitical landscape that we're looking at right now. In Louisiana, it would be like a gumbo where you just throw everything in it. There's so many pieces right now in this in the mix. I mean, you have the U.S. sitting on the same side of the table in these nuclear negotiations with Russia, but yet, Russia is invading Ukraine. We're standing with the Ukrainians. What is in this deal, the Iranian nuclear deal? What is in it for Russia? Why are they so interested in the outcome?
Well, it was interesting. The chief negotiator for Russia the other day was saying that the Iranian negotiators were, using like they were negotiating like lions. Some would argue maybe the U.S. was negotiating like lambs. For Russia right now, they were actually, as he said, negotiating with China on behalf of Iran. For Russia, I think they want to keep their trade relations with Iran geopolitically. I think they see Iran as an ally, even though they're much different in terms of ideology. You have one nation, Iran, which is radical Islam, and then you have an authoritarian regime like Vladimir Putin's. But I think they see it as a partner. They have cooperated with their nuclear program, with their nuclear reactor. So they want to keep that trade relationship going between Iran and Russia. Those are some of the reasons why they see the need for a continued relationship. But as you say, Tony, geopolitically here in the region, it is just sort of that Louisiana gumbo. So many things in the mix. So many things happening. And who would you expect to have an Israeli prime minister going to Moscow to mediate between Russia and Ukraine? It's a very, very unprecedented situation, and all the more reason for people to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem and peace here in the region.
Chris, I appreciate you staying up late there in Jerusalem to talk with us. But final question for you. Given the present administration, again, we're talking about the nuclear deal they're pursuing with Iran, but there are other issues. What are the relationships perceived to be there in Israel between our two countries, between America and Israel at present under this administration?
Well, with the current coalition government, it has changed a bit. This government, you can be described as more center left. It certainly has a wide spectrum of political parties in it, from the very far left to the very far right. And the relationship has changed since the Netanyahu government, which I would describe as almost abrasive or hostile to the Biden administration, very, very close with the Trump administration. What the current coalition is saying, they don't want to have any negotiations in public. They don't want to oppose the United States in public, but they are making themselves very clear especially about the Iranian nuclear deal. And that to Israel is probably the #1 priority for them right now.
Yes, without question. Chris Mitchell, always great to talk with you. Again, thanks for staying up late to bring us the latest there from Jerusalem.
Great to be with you, Tony.